Welcome back to another episode of the Wealthy Life podcast. Today I'm joined by Jeff Murray, and we are going to get into some really amazing topics today. I was previously on Jeff's podcast, The Power of Presence. We talked about some really, really amazing topics, and I feel like when Jeff and I speak, I feel like we can just talk forever. So I feel like this podcast episode is going to be another one of those amazing conversations, and I'm really excited to dive into it.
Thank you so much, Jan. I really appreciate you having me on. And honestly, it's always a pleasure to connect and kind of dive deep into stuff. Yeah, again, just for everybody who's listening, I'm Jeff Murray. I live in Austin, Texas. At least that's where my body is presently at the moment. But who knows where it ends up next time? But yeah, I've done coaching for the last 5 years. Kind of just stepped away from that recently and more focusing on public speaking. And I've always done sales most of my life, and also working on my first book right now, and about not quite halfway there, but we're getting there. So it's a work in progress, but I'm stoked to finally get it out there eventually.
Amazing. I'm excited for your book. I am honestly, I feel like it's going to be great.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I honestly would love to, and I don't think this is a topic you and I previously spoke about, is your athletic career. And I would
Okay.
love to talk about that because I feel like that ties really nicely into the nervous system and performance. And for a lot of high achievers, which you are, people can relate with the evolution of that past career, I want to say, and then how you've been evolving as we speak.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. It's not a topic I talk a ton about or get asked about, I guess, a lot. So it's interesting. My path, I never made it professional. So it was one of those things that, interestingly enough, I was very egoic, like most kids are, and I was a rising athlete in baseball in high school, and got multiple different offers, a total of six. There were smaller schools. I had two community colleges and four small schools, all within the state of Florida except for one. And but in that, there was something that started happening my senior year. It was pretty wild because my I was interviewed for the yearbook that year, and I remember the senior editor of the yearbook asking me, "Where do you see yourself in 15 years?" My response was, I saw myself winning the MVP of the American League with my three kids and a wife, all of which, no, well, the wife thing happened twice, but no kids, no baseball. But I mean, that was still my thought, even as a senior early on. And as the baseball season began, my coach really pretty much gave up on the team. He gave up on the seniors, and the coaches usually are very pivotal for helping seniors, and even their juniors, kind of get into some colleges, get that placement to where they really get seen in a better light. And I did get some offers, but I felt like I deserved better. I felt like, and again, that was, I was young. I was 17 at the time, and I was my uncle and my dad and everybody was asking me, why don't you go into the draft, baseball draft, and I just kept saying, no, I don't want to do that. And everybody just assumed I had already made my decision that I was going to play somewhere. And then by summertime, everybody was asking me, like, where are you going to play? And I said, well, I'm quitting. And it just blew everybody away because since the age of 4, that was the only thing I really was overly passionate about was baseball. And it was something that at that time, it was also, there was a proving aspect to it as well. I remember my grandmother always said that I was the athlete in the family and that my brother was the more intelligent one. So the only way I was going to make it in life was if I became an athlete. And there was also that, a lot of different uh, duality aspects of why I decided to walk away. And it was also, there was a lot of ego in it and too much pride. And, pride, if anybody's familiar with the Frequencies of Consciousness by David Hawkins, is the highest of the low frequencies before we break into courage, which gets us into the high. And for me, I was in a lot of pride at that point. And I didn't realize how much it impacted me and how much resentment I held for years. Because I know I could have played at the next level. I know I would have definitely been able to play in minor league ball. Would I've ever made it to the majors? Probably not. And I'd be lying if I didn't think there was some fear in that for me at that point, where the first time I realized like fear was a thing was wondering, am I going to be in my mid 30s still playing minor league ball, making, am I doing something that I enjoy? But at that point, it kind of gets to the now it's just work. And
Right.
so I kind of released all of that for years and thought I even have like a weird resentment towards for years of seeing guys wear other players' jerseys.
Mm.
It was like this weird thing that I just didn't understand. I'm like, you're literally idolizing another man. Like that just doesn't make any sense. It looks cute when if your girlfriend's wearing it or like your kids are wearing it,
Yeah.
but another guy wearing another guy's jersey, I just was never a big fan of it. And so, but even still, I mean, now that's not a thing for me, but I just didn't realize how much resentment I was holding on to. And, but it led me down into doing a breathwork session. That's how I ended up getting into helping athletes years later. After I think one of the best things about the whole experience was that I got into leadership at an early age in the corporate world and realized I'd never wanted to be led the way that my coach led me. So I always wanted to lead people in a better way. So it did kind of force me to be more of a leader. And I feel like that was a plus side. But then as I got older and I got into my low 40s, I ended up, getting into coaching and I ended up working with some athletes, former athletes, had a podcast initially around it. And it was very pivotal for me in understanding how to help people with their identity and purpose after sports. And I didn't realize as I'm doing that, thinking I figured it out, I
Mm.
didn't really figure it completely out because I was still holding resentment. And then shortly after my first psilocybin ceremony that I did, I remember kind of coming to peace with my coach and that whole situation, and him just not showing up. And literally about 2 months later, and I hadn't talked to a guy in like 25 plus
Mm.
years at this point. 2 months later, he reached out to me and asked if he could talk to me. And at that point, I'm kind of like, sure, why not? I've kind of forgiven him, put it to peace and everything, forgiven myself for holding on to the resentment. And we ended up hopping on a phone call. And the first thing he did was apologize to me for not showing up. And it was wild, just the energetics and realizing that I was, I was an innocent kid, but a very egoic kid. And I should have kept playing, but I didn't. And I used him as the reason why I stopped playing, like the main reason. And people like my grandmother or people that were telling me like I had to do this, for like the family and things like that. And
Mm.
I used all those different people to come up with the excuses to why I stopped playing until I finally accept ownership and forgave somebody like him. It all kind of I was felt like I energetically allowed him to come to peace with it as well. Had no idea that, the resentment that we hold, we don't realize the frequency of how far it reaches and what it does to other people. And it really doesn't do any good. It causes a lot of harm and it also harms our own body and keeps us from healing. And it's so for me, long-winded answer about my career in sports, but it it was definitely much shorter lived than I looking back, I feel like it should have been, but I also realized it all happened the way it was supposed to.
Mhm.
And now I can at least go to games and feel at peace with it all and not feel any kind of resentment. And but I've had people tell me they're like, "Oh, you probably would never made it." And I'm just like, "Well, you don't know that. And I don't know that." I said, "But I know where my talent was and I know how fast my talent was getting better because I was a very short kid growing up. I didn't start going till my 10th grade year. I was like 5'3" going into 10th grade.
Mm.
And within 2 years I shot up to 6 foot.
Wow.
Um, so my talent was already getting to the point where it was I was being seen by people and just not at the clip and the rate that I felt like I deserved at that time, but it is what it is. And I'm just grateful that it's led me to where I'm at today.
there's so there's so much in there as you were talking, and I mean, I'm really glad that your coach reached out, first of all. It's you and I always talk about energetics
Mhm.
and yeah, it is crazy that, people from doesn't matter where they are in the world, doesn't matter how many years have passed, they feel it and they sense it, and for some reason they will, respond because they feel this urge to.
Yeah.
I don't wanna assume anything, but where was the resentment coming from? Was it because you wish that you continue to play, or was it more towards the coach?
I honestly realize now that I feel that there was just this resentment, not even to just one particular individual or even continuously playing, but it was this resentment to where it seemed at the time I didn't realize it, but looking back now, the connection to having male figures that were older than me letting me down.
Mm,
Um, you know, because at that time, that was some of the resentment that I had towards like my father. It was my mom got divorced when I was 5. Then my mom got remarried and then they got divorced. And then, I looked up to my coaches. I looked up to specific people. And because in essence, they are father figures, especially at that young of an age. And it just reiterated that fact of I can't trust,
right,
you know, uh, an older man who's I'm looking towards as guidance or as a mentor. And the resentment kind of stemmed from there. It wasn't just one person. It was the masculine energy as a whole, just men in general not being and showing up the way that I felt that they should be. And I vowed to myself that I wouldn't ever allow myself to do that.
right. And how did that shape you from all those years until you finally realized it was more of the resentment towards other males not showing up for you when you were younger? Did that affect how you look at other men all those years, and also yourself? How did you look at yourself as you lived through those decades?
Yeah, I feel there was definitely an unhealthy masculine for a long time in me where I was hyper masculine about stuff. It was like always work, 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 do, 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 go, go, go. Uh, Constantly realizing I kept it's weird when you hold on to that resentment, you start doing still things, even though you think you're pushing it away,
Mm,
you're doing things to still prove. And I kept trying to prove. I hated taking orders from men. Like it just
mm,
I'd always find a reason to look at them and say, yeah, they're not as good as me. Um, I'm so much better than they are because I see things from a different perspective. I saw things from a different lens. And even though there was some truth and validity to the way I would show up for other people, um, what I did realize is I kept attracting even like my male friends, people sometimes that weren't, complete polar opposites of me. And I was always kind of what I would consider the glue of keeping friendships together. And what I realized was that was also in direct correlation to me trying to keep the family together. My name, Jeff, stands for God's peace. And I took that literally as a kid. Like my mom, I still have a coffee mug that my mom got me when I was a kid. It says Jeff and it says peaceful. And is the meaning. And I literally thought that my role in life was to create peace for other people, even at the expense of my own peace. So, and that was really something that I kind of took to heart. I thought that because I was blessed with broad shoulders, that I was supposed to carry more weight than other people because other men in my life were not carrying the weight. I created stories just like we all do as kids, but you can't tell a kid that those stories aren't real when it's their experience that created this version of them. And it carried on into, most of my life. It wasn't until I mean, I had gotten into personal development mindset work back in my early 30 or mid 30s, and but it wasn't until, I mean, mindset, as we know, is it's barely even half the battle. It's more it's more the inner work that really requires the difficult stuff. The overpower, overcome stuff is only take you as far as you've gone to heal your traumas. And it wasn't until I got into like breath work that I really started to understand areas of my life that I had basically just pushed through
Mm.
and just tried to overcome those that with my mindset, and realizing that something was happening in my body that was storing it somewhere, and releasing those things and finally allowing myself to be free in so many ways.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people can resonate, and actually a lot of my clients, current and past, have gone through very similar um, programming and stories in their own minds, especially as males. You feel this responsibility almost to carry a lot of weight on your shoulders, exactly like you said. And you feel this responsibility of, I can't let other people down. And interestingly enough, I went into this butcher shop out of all places to pick up some beef bones one day, and it was this very old school Greek man, and he loved to talk, and I just, for some reason, we got on the topic of masculinity, and he went to the door and he was saying, guys always let their girlfriends come in first, but you know what, as a protective man, you can't let the woman go first, because what if there's a robbery inside the shop? And I'm going, who's thinking about a robbery? But he's saying a guy's responsibility, his sole responsibility, is to provide and protect, and is so ingrained in his mind that, and I think that's where a lot of, high achievers like yourself, and this sense of hyper responsibility. I need to provide, I need to do these things. And so I just want to see your take on this, is in terms of your nervous system. How was that when you were going through that period where you're saying to yourself, I need to show up. I need to show up for everybody, even though it hurts me. How was that for you internally in your internal world?
I think it's the beautiful thing about the human body to me is that we're so resilient. And I don't even think at the time, I looking back, I can say like, yeah, my nervous system was constantly in fight or flight, and typically in fight, because that's what I did. I was not someone that ran from things. I was the guy that would always say, if there was a train and somebody was on the train tracks, I was going to be the guy that would run out and try to save the person. It was always this trying to be the hero, but what I didn't realize was that I was trying to be the hero for everybody else when I was never being the hero for myself. And that was, but my nervous system is because my nervous system was always shot. It was literally just constantly in this mode of I'm not enough, I'm not enough, I'm not enough, and I got to keep proving myself. And what's crazy is a lot of times you'd think in your mind you're actually saying to yourself, "Oh, I am enough," or "I am better than this person." When really it's the complete opposite. The nervous system is like saying, "Well, if you really feel that way about yourself, your nervous system's trying to tell you like you should be calm, you should be confident,
Mhm.
not cocky." Uh, and yet there was still something where you have this air of confidence, but then it's like confidence shaped by fear. It's like same thing as like love. People say, "Oh, I love you." It's like a parent, nothing against anybody who's a parent, but a lot of parents, they love their children and yet they're trying to control their children. And to me, that's, yes, is it love? Yes. And it's also love rooted in fear. And I feel because they don't want their kids to go through the same things that they went through, but it's, you kind of just surrender and allow things to unfold and evolve the way they're supposed to. And for me, yeah, my nervous system was just so all over the place. And back then I just thought it was that I just had a crazy ton of amounts of energy. It just because I was always, on alert. Like everything was, I mean, I would sleep 5 hours a night, it just, and I was fine.
Mm.
And I mean, I don't get much more now. I get between 6 and 7, which seems to be a healthy balance for me. But it was one of those things where I just never felt like I needed to, I could always do more. I was built different. But that was just basically my nervous system never relaxing. And, yeah, I mean, it's not worth it. I feel like it aged me a little bit faster than I would have liked it to, but at the same time, I'm like, I've got, wisdom hairs now on my face and on basically the side of my head. So it's like, it is what it is. The gray is okay. And, but it definitely is, it's not healthy. And the faster men can lean into just the idea of healing and being okay with it. Um, I don't even like to use the word vulnerable with it because it's vulnerable means you're kind of exposing yourself to harm or to be hurt. It's just being more authentic with yourself. And we think we're authentic, but it's the authenticity through the mask that we've created.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's definitely a mask to protect,
Yeah.
to I always think we're crabs. We have such soft inner cores, and we have this hard shell on the outside, and the
Oh,
pincers, like, "Don't come close to me or I'll pinch you." But
I love that
we
analogy. I've never heard that. That's good.
I don't know, I think because I'm such a visual person, I always have these images pop up when people talk or when I think of things. So I think of, like, crab fights because they fight with their pincers, and but as humans, we just want connection, we want closeness, we want each other. But over time, our shells have gotten thicker and thicker and harder and harder. So we're basically just seeing each other's masks, like you said, and not our soft inner core.
Yeah.
And what I always talk about is the balance between masculine and feminine. Because when you're masculine, you're trying, you're doing, you're giving, there's so much effort involved in the process. Whereas feminine, there's more flow, there's a lot more softness and vulnerability and receiving. And do you find, and I know this is such a it's such a, I think, a delicate topic for a lot of men, especially when they're still in that phase of I'm a man, you know? I need to be masculine, and even anything close to saying, invite a little bit of femininity into your state is almost threatening to a lot of men in that phase of their
Absolutely.
life. So, would you say that you have a little bit more balance between the masculine and the feminine after you've done the breath work, after you've done the psilocybin journeys and the inner work?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is, being raised predominantly by a single mother, that I was introduced to a lot more feminine energy at a younger age. Um, and so I had this sense of me that was such a nature boy. Like I was always out in nature. I was always doing things. I even got my degree in landscape design. I never utilized it, but it's one of those things. I love nature. I love being out in nature, which always, but then I felt I would have this weird pull of like, just put me in the middle of the city, where it's concrete structures
Mm,
and metal everywhere. And I do like the balance of both. And yet I think because I was exposed at such a young age to an emotional woman, being my mom, I love her so much. She went through a lot. She was raising two boys on her own and
right.
living paycheck to paycheck. So it's one of those things that you realize that you would get exposed to something like that. So you kind of start creating a bit of a balance at that age, more so than you would even care to even realize. And
Mm,
but I started to reject some of that balance as I got into my, late teens, 20s and early 30s and then really pushed away from it my late 30s going into like 40. And then it was I finally, and because I was that's when I got all my mindset. And to me mindset is really it's so much more of a masculine thing, because it's always about kind of overachieving, overdoing. Sometimes we can get caught up in that too much, and like the David Goggins of the world. So nothing against guys like that, but it is, it's not healthy for people that don't understand the duality of life. And
Absolutely.
so for me, I feel at this point after going through breathwork sessions, really leaning into what it is to receive, because that was something that I'm not good at, or I
Mm.
wasn't. And I had a mentor once say, "Can you receive at the capacity to which you give?" And that to me just didn't make any sense. And so something I've worked, because the feminine receives very much, and they are able to receive and keep things in flow. And that's something I realized that I had pushed away so much because I was always in that hyper unhealthy masculine where you're just constantly trying to, do all the things for everybody and never giving yourself the time to rest. And that was something too, is learning to receive and learning to rest. And at this point, I think that I don't think I have it all figured out, but it's definitely a lot better than it's ever been.
Yeah, the receiving thing is so tricky. So many people find it so tricky. Um, how did you start getting more comfortable receiving? If you can recall what that process looked like.
For me, it was really learning to trust that there wasn't someone on the other end that was doing it, giving me something from a manipulative standpoint.
Okay.
Um, it's funny because I made a post that, I get, you get those memories on Facebook or whatever that
Yeah.
about posts that you made. And I made a post last year about a benefactor, and a benefactor is essentially, someone that gives to people without any condition. And you break down the word, it's like, have you been a factor in someone's
Mhm.
life, And but so much of our world is there's a condition tied to everything. And it was realizing that the version of me that created the story that receiving something from someone meant I had to give something back, even though that's not really what it's supposed to be, made me realize that I just need to trust that that version of me that created that story, that doesn't need to happen anymore. And until I released that, it was all about me and taking ownership of that aspect of realizing I just need to trust that the person on the other end that is wanting to give something to me isn't doing it from a malicious standpoint of expecting something in return.
Right.
Can I give something in return? Absolutely. I mean, I'm any of my friends, if you ever talk to any of my friends, they'll tell you that I'm always there. When someone needs to move, I help them move. When someone needs furniture to do something, I'm there. If somebody needs me to come over and watch their place while they're gone, I'm there. Like that's just if I need to watch their dogs. I mean that's the best
Yeah.
one. I get to watch the dogs. So, uh, but it's just to me, and I don't do, but I used to do it also from the desire to feel accepted,
Mhm.
when I would give. And that's the other unhealthy part of not being able to receive, is that you're not even giving necessarily from, because you just don't accept yourself. You're giving because you're looking for the need of something. Now I've learn to give with no condition and just say, do I want, if I don't feel good about giving to somebody, I'll say no. Like I'm gonna put up a wall or showing up to something. I'm gonna say, you know what, this is my boundary. This doesn't feel aligned for me this time, and I'm just not gonna show up. And learning to say no, but also learning to give from a place of no condition, and then receive from the idea that the other person on the other end isn't being malicious. And if they do end up being malicious, then that's okay. And at least it allows you to see and say, okay, that's not my battle to fight. That's their battle, and that's okay. Now I see where they're at. But it was really uncomfortable for a while. There's definitely times where I just didn't, it just felt weird. Like you always feel the visceral response before the mind actually talks. If we actually think about when someone's giving something to us and we've never been used to receiving, it's your body kind of almost has this weird like tremor like feeling, and it's like, oh my god, that feels so uncomfortable. And just learning to sit with that feeling and saying it's okay,
Yeah.
I'm safe, like there isn't any kind of condition attached to this, and just finally getting to the point where you are kind of grounded in it and you just say, yes, I received that, thank you so much. Even compliments, I think that's the best way to get started with, is compliments. Someone says you look beautiful today, and it's just like, oh, but you look beautiful too. It's like they didn't ask for that.
Yeah.
Just receive it, and then if you
Just
want to afterwards say thank you, I received that. You know what, you look really amazing too, your hair looks great, or whatever, your smile looks awesome, whatever.
yeah.
But just receive it first, because our inability to receive, and for anybody that's listening, when someone gives you a compliment and you don't receive it well, you're actually kind of denying them the joy that they felt in wanting to give you that compliment. And now they almost feel not worthy to even give you a compliment. It's such a wild way of how the mind actually works. So just give them the benefit and the respect of actually wanting to even give you that compliment ahead of time, and then just take it in. Say, you know what, thank you so much. I really received that.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that, especially as a man, because as a female saying it to a male, a lot of the times they think well, even some of my clients say, no, we think differently because you're a female and I'm a male, but the human mind is very similar in how both sexes work. So thank you for pointing that out. And that's exactly it is if you give me a compliment and I'm going, "Jeff, you look amazing too today," and I'm deflecting. I'm not honoring, I'm not respecting the energy and the time and maybe even the courage of you saying that to me. So, eh and I always think of, human connection as building trust, building this relationship, and, something that you talk about a lot and is presence.
Yep.
If you're not present with me or I'm not present with you, there is that deflection, there is that denial of the energy you're giving me, and so I'm not receiving it in a way that honors your presence as well. I just wanna go back to one point you were saying before was trust, and you continue to say trust with, the receiving, and also when you were talking about your baseball coach from that period onwards, and you were saying after that, after he didn't show up for you the way that you would like for him to show up, there was that loss of trust in other male figures. And trust for the nervous system is so important, just like receiving, right? And that physical feeling you were describing earlier is that nervous system responding to that discomfort of the unfamiliar, the unknown. And trust is something that really puts the nervous system at ease. And so, in terms of trust, how did you go about with that process, trusting men again or trusting yourself to receive? Was that a long process, a short process? Did you walk yourself through it, or was there support? I'm asking this because so many people ask me, "Why does it take so long for me to trust something?" And I always say, it takes a tenth of the time to break it and probably takes hundreds, even thousands more repetitions for you to trust again. So, from experiences, and it's always useful for people to hear from other people's experiences in terms of regaining that trust and learning to trust again. How was that process for you?
Yeah, I mean, and specifically in correlation to trusting men that were like mentors or guides or father figures, I I really, I didn't even know that I needed to work on it until I did a breathwork ceremony where it was my first guided one I ever did, and it was like a 90-minute. It was wild how there's like 50 guys in the room. It was very intense,
Okay.
um, and a lot of emotions. I wasn't one of the ones screaming and like crying and like, but it was very internal for me, and
Mm,
I saw myself. It was almost like I had been transported back to junior high school, when a lot of the initial pain of all that stuff started. And I was walking down the hallway, and on the sides of the hallway was every man that ever betrayed me. and I had to look them in the eye and say, "I forgive you."
Wow.
And also I forgive myself for even, for being in that situation. And that was the first time I realized I was like, "Holy shit, like I've got some work to do around this whole topic." But that honestly, that it's forgiveness, trust. It's not that you sit there and be like, "Oh, just blindly trust someone again after they've broken your trust."
Mhm.
But first and foremost, you have to forgive. And it's not even the forgiveness of the person, it's the forgiveness of yourself for being the version of yourself that even allowed something like that to happen. Because, and that's the thing, is we don't trust others because we don't even trust ourselves in the situation, or that we wouldn't be able to, um, avoid a situation like that again. So first thing and first and foremost to me, it's forgiveness. And then in that, it does take some time. It's a slow build, but you have to be willing. You can't trust someone if you don't forgive them, like if for something that happens. So that has to be, and forgiving yourself. And then once you get to that threshold, you can start doing different things to feel how your somatic body feels in a moment whenever something triggering happens, and the visceral response. Because when we start to get triggered by someone, even if they didn't even do anything, that consciously that they're doing anything, what's really happening at that point is there's something that they've experienced in their past that has caused them to feel this way. And same thing with you. So it's the energetics of that whole path. And then it's just doing different things to feel into yourself and feel into your body. Don't take your initial reaction to something. Allow yourself to sit with it, breathe into it. Breath, as you know, because you've gotten trained in this as well, and it's breath is by far, to me, the most powerful transformation aspect to learn how to trust, because basically it's your nervous system gets on fight or flight when you're in that moment of feeling like you can't trust something, and allowing yourself to breathe into your body, allow yourself to calm down and reimagine the scenario and say, no, the reason why I'm feeling this is because of a past experience. Let me allow this person to try to, lean in and actually be a better person this time. Like, I'm sure they want to try. At least give them the opportunity to try, and then not attach to the outcome. Not attaching to the outcome is super key as well. And this goes for intimate relationships as well. It's so many people take their baggage or their pain from the past relationship and move it into the next one. And you're already setting yourself up for a losing battle. You're already not giving that new person the freedom to actually be the person they want to be for you in the relationship, because now you're carrying the lack of trust from the past relationship into this one. I always tell people, like, I've really worked on this idea of whenever I get out of a relationship, I sit with it for a while, because to me, if I go back in and bury myself into another person, I'm just taking some of that on. And I just always try to show up like fully in every relationship that I get into, because that's doing a disservice to myself by coming into it with a lack of trust because of a past experience, and a disservice to the new person. Um, and if I get hurt in the process, that's okay. At least I was authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. And you trusted yourself too, and that requires a level of trust.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it goes back to, the things that you talk about, presence. And you're so great and you're so present every time I talk to you. So I want to call you an expert in presence, but I don't know if such a thing exists. But if it does, you're the expert in presence. And
Appreciate that.
with trust, it requires so much presence. You can't trust without presence.
Right.
And so I'm curious, when did you start diving into the topic of presence and start making it a thing, because you have a whole podcast on presence?
Yeah. It was, it happened, I guess it was about I mean, presence has always been pivotal for me. There's something that people have always told me is that when I'm around you, like I feel like I'm the most important person right then. Like you don't seem to sway your attention any place. And I get it because sometimes I'll be talking to someone. Next thing you know, I'm on a conversation for an hour and a half, and then I forget that I need to check my phone, but I'm so engulfed in the conversation. But then people are like, "Where were you?" And I'm like, "Well, I was in a good conversation and wanted to be fully there for that person." But I realized about 2.5 years ago, just the idea of presence and that everything good in my life has always come from being present
Mhm.
and being in a moment, realizing that there's no other place I'm supposed to be other than right here, right now, in this moment, talking to you, or later on, maybe doing a sales call or whatever the case may be. That's the most important thing in that moment. And that's kind of what the concept of the book will be around a little bit. But and also into your fact about trust is that you're absolutely right. You can't have trust without presence, because presence allows you to feel into a moment and just be here, because we don't trust. Why? Because something happened in our past. Well, that means that we're not being present, because now we're focused on the lack of trust of something that happened in our past and we're carrying it into the present, but our mind is still focused on that moment or that thing or that experience that happened in the past. And typically, as I always say, like, and I feel like presence truly, and this is, I'm not a doctor, obviously, or a scientist, but I really believe that presence, when we can learn to just really embody presence, full presence, that it's going to heal a lot of depression, anxiety in our population. Because the past is linked to depression. We get depressed about things that have already happened, and the future is linked to anxiety. And I feel if we can start teaching people how to really just hone in and just be here in the moment right now. Yeah, things are going to happen. We're always going to get caught up in certain things, but uh, the more we can be present, the more we're able to trust, and also it just creates a better world for everybody, and people feel seen and feel heard and feel accepted, and they don't feel like they have to be performative in presence. It's there. It
Yeah.
flows. It's not forced. It's just something where you're just allowing yourself to be. And for me, it's really just become just a way of life. And when I got on this journey of personal development and getting into coaching and helping people, you think you know which direction you want to take it, and you try things and you go and do things, and uh but as it evolved, this word of presence just really became paramount of the direction that I knew that I had to take things. And yeah, in a perfect world, again, well, this is probably the ego talking, but it would be great to be seen as like Brene Brown with vulnerability, be Jeff Murray about presence. Uh, that's the ego saying, yeah, if I had a goal to take this thing, yeah, I would love to have people say, have my name associated with that word,
Mhm.
just so that people can really just hopefully look at me as someone that, if they're ever needing some assistance with something like that or support, and some guidance, I can be a resource for them.
Yeah. I mean, it could be the ego talking, but I don't think it's egoic for you to say, because the more people you reach, the more people benefit from presence. And
Yeah.
something that I always talk about with my clients is playfulness and curiosity.
Mm,
And that playfulness and the curiosity is kids channel it naturally, and as adults, we kinda lose it along the way because we think we have so many other things to worry about. We can't play because I got work to do. I can't be curious because I already know what's going on in the world. But
yeah.
going back to presence, if you're present, everything is beautiful, everything is new, everything is interesting. And I sometimes find myself looking at leaves and the veins in the leaves and
Mhm.
the murmuration of birds, or how, leaves fall and all of these things. you only notice it when you're present, and you only notice it when you trust the moment is safe, when you trust that
Yeah.
your body is safe and you're able to be present with yourself, with the world, with the people we're having conversations with. So it not only calms the nervous system, it makes you happier, it makes you more connected to the world, it makes you more productive in the best ways possible.
Yeah.
And so please be the Brene Brown of the presence world.
I appreciate that. You saying the thing about the leaf. I was just had a yesterday, I think it was, or 2 days ago. Yeah, there was a snail. Snails move so slow, and but I just stopped and was just mesmerized by. It. I was like, man, a snail. And then you look at the shell with the whole spiral, which is like the Fibonacci sequence, and the
Yeah.
spiral aspect of things. And I'm just like, man, a snail must be such an amazing metaphor for life of just slow down, appreciate nature, like lean in, just appreciate the process and just be in the moment. Allow things to just slow down enough to where you see life happening to you and not, or for you and not to you, and just really just be embracing it all. And yeah, I mean, like you said, you do become more productive. And that's, I think, the other thing about presence that I've realized is that everybody always talks about, I need more time. And which is interesting. Like, I wish I had more time with my family, or I wish I had more time to do my job or to spend with my wife or whatever the case may be. And,
Mhm.
but it's our level of presence in the time that we have with them that we get more time back. I believe presence saves time, because it's like if you and I were talking and I'm sitting here, like we're on this call and I'm just like looking at my phone, I mean, or we're just really in it right now, like we're going to feel fulfilled that, man, this conversation was amazing. Whereas if you're sitting at dinner and you're talking on your phone with someone, I know that's like an extreme thing, but everybody does it in our world today. And then you're going to sit there and say, oh man, like all of a sudden your friend dies and you're gonna be like, man, you're going to remember the last time you had a conversation with them. You weren't even really connecting. So
Absolutely.
it's just get out of your own head, get away from the distractions, and just be here in a moment with someone and just do what's right with what's right in front of you. And just, it's all there.
Yeah, definitely. I love that you brought that up because one thing that I always say to people is we're in our current world, everyone's about longevity. You know, Brian Johnson's like, I want to live 200 years or for, I think he wants to be immortal. I think that's his current goal, but
Yeah.
you know, power to him.
Sure.
Um, but what I always say to people is that if you're present, you're actually elongating your life. If you're present, you're actually living more years, more minutes, more seconds, however you want to measure your life, because you're putting more substance and quality into your life rather than just somehow using I don't know supplements or whatever external thing you're doing. Because at the end of the day, our life is internal. Why are we using external things to try to elongate something that is completely internal?
Exactly.
So, presence, physical, mental, productivity, everything. It's so important. And I think it's just like connection, right? We're more connected. We feel more fulfilled. We have higher quality of life. And
Mm,
connection and presence go hand in hand always.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, and I was, this is something that I was debating in my own mind and actually had a conversation yesterday with somebody about this, is that as we move more into AI, as we move more into technology, have been, having this debate in my mind is do I go into some kind of AI business because everybody's talking about get into AI, that's going to make you more money. Great. Money's great because money is you're able to, make things happen with money in this world.
Yeah.
But on the flip side is if I focus more on human connection, more on the actual human needs to feel
Mm,
actually fulfilled and have a high quality life, I would more invest into the human world rather than the AI world. So this is something that I've been, debating. So and another question that came up was or actually rather a point was, presence and connection. And human quality connection here. You and I having this conversation, it doesn't make anybody money, but it makes us so happy and so
Yeah,
fulfilled, our heart's so full. And every conversation I have with you, I walk away with my heart so full. I can't
likewise.
do that with AI. I
Like,
can't do that with technology, you know, that
yeah,
can only be done through humans. So I think that's where the dilemma comes in for a lot of people is which direction do we go? We need money to survive. We need money to help other people. But on the flip side is human connection doesn't make you a lot of money.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance, but I think, I mean, hit the nail on the head though. I mean, even with what you do with the wealthy aspect is that how do we define currency? How do we define money? How do we define wealth? Because to me, um, you know, as they say, like if I think we've talked about this before, is a man has 1,000 problems until his health is the problem, and then he only has one.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here trying to build all these amazing things that we can't take any of it with us. And meanwhile, we're losing human connection. And on our deathbed, we're going to be sitting there regretting the fact that, I mean, unless we're like sociopathic, but regretting the fact that we didn't connect with people that we loved more, that we weren't there when they needed us. And I think that that's something that human connection may not initially create a dollar sign, but over time it does. And it's just trusting the process of that that's what it'll do, because we don't know, like through us just talking, it could lead to something else where, I mean, you introduced me to Stuart the other day and we had a great conversation.
Amazing.
Um, so you just don't know where human connection leads, right? It's one of those things that we just have to trust the process. And I think from the divine aspect of life that that's really what we're supposed to do, but we're so busy trying to force
Mhm.
something that we're just bypassing. And eventually then that's why will be the demise of our own existence is we're always constantly forcing, and this world is moving faster and faster. And what we need now more than ever is human connection. And I believe we're going to get to a point where, we're going to have, it's not going to be all the population, but more and more people forming little compounds where we all just like, support each other. We're one's growing this crop, another one's doing this one. We're all tending to the land. We're helping raise children or whatever the case may be. In living in kind of a situation like that where, yeah, is money necessary? Sure, but we all figure it out
Yeah.
and we work together and we come back to community, which is connection, which is presence.
Yeah. That would be the dream. That
Yeah.
was, I actually had a dream about that the other day,
Did you
interestingly
really?
enough. Yeah, you mentioned that it goes back to, I don't even know what era it would be where, I'll give you my cow and you give me your sheep, and it's all about trading commodities rather than, money. Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, money is just a piece of paper or a number in the bank account. But we
Yeah.
trade, material goods that what you're good at making and what I'm good at making, but we are a really tight knit community that we can continue to support each other, and hopefully one day we go back to that, or even some form of it. Even if there's a little bit of money involved, is totally fine, but
Yeah.
bring back that connection piece, that the more grounded human piece of
Yeah.
it all.
Absolutely.
One last question for you.
Sure. Absolutely.
What are your 3 non-negotiables for performance, for feeling good in your body, for feeling good in your mind?
Mm, no, that's a great question. My three non-negotiables. First and foremost, and this will probably change at some point, but usually coffee in the morning. I've got to have my coffee, and it's weird. I'm not an addictive personality, but there's something about the warming nature
Yeah.
of that cup of coffee in the morning. Um, it just it's almost like you get into your habits and that ritual. So it's just something like that, that it creates that initial, because when I have my coffee, then I take out my journal and then I go outside and I take in
Yeah.
the sunrise and then I work out. And it's just like, it's kind of starts the thing, it's not the thing, but it just starts the thing. Um, so that's probably not like the best response in the world, but either way, non-negotiable for performance is just constantly looking for ways to get better, always knowing that I have more to learn.
Mm.
Um, and because to me, that's just it's. I don't ever want to just rest on the fact that, and it's not because the world's moving so fast and moving so quickly anymore. It's just that I don't ever want to rest on the fact that I know everything, and that you mentioned the word curiosity earlier. I always loved the story of Curious George growing up because he was curious about everything. And to me, I'm like, I'm a curious person by nature. And it allows me to continue to expand my knowledge in different areas that who knows where it's going to lead me to. So, A, coffee, B, be curious. And then C, I would say the third one would be, wow, what would be a third one? I would just say that well, surrendering. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, presence is surrender as well. So I would say that in that aspect, I'll utilize his presence for the context of this. But
Yeah.
in that, presence allows me to surrender to the idea of all of this is happening. Some of it I feel is predetermined, and that if I attach too much to something, that means I'm holding on to something from my past, which means doesn't allow me to be present, which means it's going to keep me from actually staying focused on what could potentially happen in the future. So, coffee, curiosity, and presence. There we
Amazing.
go.
The best 3. I
Sure.
love coffee too. I totally feel you on, the warmth and just something about it starts your day. I tried matcha for a little bit. It just doesn't do it.
Right.
So I feel you on that. Nothing wrong with a good cup of coffee, mold free, of course.
Yes. Mold free, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah,
No more toxins. Yeah.
yeah, no more. We have enough in our world these days.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on all the social channels, mainly Instagram and then LinkedIn. LinkedIn is just my name, Jeff Murray, and then Instagram is Jeff Murray now. Currently, that's what the handle says. Who knows if it stays that way? Other than that, the Power of Presence podcast, and I still have my website up that still says the old moniker of Athletes Arte, but be working on that. I've already changed it around to where it's more based around just public speaking. Um, but eventually the play on that is going to eventually change it all to around presence.
Okay,
Yeah, those are
amazing.
the different ways.
Awesome. I'll have everything in the show notes so people can check you out and listen to your
Awesome.
podcast.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Jeff, for spending time with us, sharing your wisdom and your experience and your stories. It was awesome conversation as always. So, yeah, and I hope everyone took away a lot from that conversation. It's always nice chatting with you. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.